Hello, guys. Every time just before we start, I feel like we're launching a SpaceX rocket or something with this timer. Uh, Hold on, I think I have an echo. So Nadir, could you please maybe share your screen?
Sure, give me a second. Hey, it's White T-shirt day. All right. See here, and let me share my screen. All right. If you guys could just let us know if you can see the presentation and you can hear my voice. Cool. Before we get started, just a little thing I like to say. If there's some sort of breaking or some connection issues or anything like that, if I'm speaking too quickly, if I'm not speaking fast enough, or if you guys can understand something, please feel free to use the chat. The chat is there for that reason specifically, so you can get any questions in that you need to get in, and if there's any kind of connection issues, etc. With that being said, if I have your guys' blessing, Dennis and Azat, I'll get started. All right. First off, the Dennis, I don't know if you want to take this.
Yeah, sure. Just want to congratulate the winners. Olga found 33 bugs, which is impressive. Great job. Christina found 30, which is second place. So the first one is, I believe, $100. So the second one is 75, and third is 50, going to Herb, 26 defects. For some of you who couldn't find a single one or just didn't have time, I mean, it happens. That's okay too. That's why we are here. We're gonna be learning for another 2 months, basically. So you will get a lot of chances to find them, and we're gonna have quite a few sessions around those. So don't worry much. I remember myself. I was looking at the application, couldn't figure out like what I was supposed to do here and how to search for them. So which is fine, guys. It's still a learning process. You will get it. It's not that complicated. All right, so let's keep moving.
All right. So congrats again to you guys. A good start for everyone. So what's on the agenda for today? We're gonna go over the SDLC, which is the software development lifecycle, the different phases. We're gonna talk about Scrum. We're gonna actually do a bit of a Scrum poker um, bit, and then obviously we'll end with some Q and A's. If you guys have questions during the session itself, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to get back to you on within while the session is going on. But if not, at least we'll have that for the record towards the end. So with that being said, let's get started. Now, what is the SDLC? Um, some of you know, others may not. It's the way that I'm gonna do this. I might or might not read the definition for you, but I'll give you what's a real world example or what the actual definition is. Right. Again, the SDLC stands for the software development lifecycle. It's the process. It's the process that we use in the industry to design, develop, and test high quality software. Right. So the aim of this is basically to be able to go through this in an iterative fashion. Iterative means cyclical, so you're repeatedly. It's a repeatable process, and how it's structured and the different process, the different phases of it. Obviously, I'm going to go throughout this. Again, the aim is to produce high quality software that meets or exceeds customer expectations, reaches completion within time, and cost estimates. Now that's extremely important as well, because if we have these processes in place, we're able to complete everything within the given amount of time, and most importantly within budget. That's very important because developers, QAs, we don't come cheap. It costs money for the project to be going, at any given time. Uh, so with that being said, again, to repeat the whole thing, right? It's a process for the software project within an organization. There's planning that's done. that describes how we're going to develop the product, how we're going to maintain it, how we're going to replace it, add any enhancements, fix any defects. So the life cycle defines a methodology for improving the quality of software and the overall development process. Again, the point here is to have a repeatable process in place, which has checks and balances. Everybody knows what phase we're in. Everybody knows how much time it's going to take. Everybody's aware of. Well, you might not know how much time it's going to take, but you're aware of all these different steps you need to take in order for you to develop a product and deliver it to the customer. So that is itself is the whole life cycle. Again, slowly I'm gonna open up the onion for you, right, and kind of explain to you what's going on. But this is the basic definition of the SDLC. Now, each of the different phases within the SDLC and where we fit in, this is the perfect graphic for that, right? An ideation, as you can see from, actually, let me use my pointer. The ideation here, that starts off where there's a brainstorm of ideas that solve a particular problem. Now, it doesn't magically just appear in your mind either. There are business individuals, right, that are representatives of the business. They are either business analysts, owners, project managers that interact with customers and find out what the customers are looking for, or what's missing in their particular software, or if they even have a product at all, right? So that all is kind of the ideation process, where everybody's kind of thinking about what problem are we trying to solve here. And from there, then you get an idea of what you're trying to do, is where your requirements come in, right? Once you interact with the stakeholders and users to collect that information, kind of solidify and have an exact, a bit of a clearer idea of what exactly we're looking for. And these requirements are done by business. Again, requirements gathering is done by business, and we kind of come in, the rest of the team, which are developers, QAs, whoever the product owner might be, and kind of get an idea of what it is that's going to happen and how we're going to tackle it. The design portion of it is creating the actual architecture, right? So again, like I mentioned, right, it's a cycle. So this is the next stage. It's the design, where developers sit and actually figure out how they're going to code something. How are they going to you know what, actually my mic is probably going off because I have a fan going, and it's probably annoying you guys. Give me just a second. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah, that happens. So again, same point. The design process is where all the nuts and bolts basically are put together, right? This is where the foundation is laid on how we're going to design this. Again, QA is part of all these processes, right? We're privy to them. We're not necessarily doing anything right now at this point in the design, because again, we're not developers. We don't develop any kind of software itself, right? So with that being said, the next step is the development stage, right? So once the design is done, this is how we're going to create it. This is the technology we're going to use. These are the different, whatever language that the company decides to go with, the tools, et cetera, et cetera. Then comes the development phase. Now, the development phase is where the actual code is being written. The code is actually being created. Programmers or developers are actually sitting there doing their lines of code. That's when you see in those movies when you have like the code falling down on the screen like the Matrix. This is that process. While this is going on, this is where QA slowly starts to come into play around this little portion, where we start creating our test cases. We start figuring out the requirements, asking those questions, generating our documentation while the development is going on at the same time. Unit testing is done by developers on their code. So that's not us and not quite yet, right? So again, guys, if I'm going off script a little bit, it's because people are asking questions. So I like getting to the questions while I go, just if I can do a quick answer. All right. So next phase, this is our time. This is the QA time to shine. This is the testing phase. This is where you've received some sort of code, some sort of product, some sort of functionality, and it's now your job to take a look at it and test it, right? This is all done in a test environment. by QA. Sometimes you'll get help from the BAs or whatever, who are kind of wanting to see what the product really looks like, and so on, right? So this is our time to shine. This is where we come in, and this is the entire phase that's where testing is done, right? Next, after testing has been completed, comes the deployment phase. All right, deployment means it's preparing the software to run and operate in a specific environment, which means production, which means live, which means to the customer. So, for example, if we're Amazon, right, this is where the whole Amazon universe is released to the public, right? That's the deployment process of how we're going to do that, and then it's released to the public. That's how the deployment and release are kind of one after the other. And then after that, we have the maintenance phase, right? No software or application will ever get released 100% bug free. That's just not how it's going to happen. No matter if you're using automation, you're using manual testing, no matter what kind of, you might have the greatest developers and the greatest testers and the greatest of everything and everything. You still will only get maybe 99% if you're lucky, right? And nobody's ever going to release a 100% bug free product, no matter who you are. And that's where maintenance comes in, right? We continue to make sure that we're maintaining the product. If there's any bugs that we find, if there's any updates that we need to make, this is that part of the phase, right? We're maintaining the product, we're continually testing it, regression testing new functionality or new features that are feature functionality that we're adding, and taking it from there. All right. Again, then again, it's a life cycle, right? So it continues, right? Basically you continue to get new requirements, you continue to design, you continue to develop and test and deploy and maintain, right? So it continues throughout. So it's not a one-time thing, right? The ideation process here in the beginning might be a one-time thing, but it is also it's still part of that cycle where you're continually asking your customers, you're continually thinking of ways to improve the product and so on and so forth, and then developing and testing it, releasing it, and maintaining it. All right. So again, we're going to continue on this process and thought process. So if you have any questions, again, just keep asking them. This is the order, correct? So this is really the order that you usually go in. Again, there is.
Yeah, and this is actually a very popular interview question, by the way. So be prepared. So we're not just showing you because we wanted to show it to you, but it's very popular interview question.
And not only is it an interview question, this is how it's done, period. Right? This is the reality of how our whole process is in the real QA world, or in the product world, really.
And this picture also will show you the difference between quality assurance and testing, which is another good topic, another interview question. Basically, quality assurance is the process of developing good quality product, right? And it means on every single stage here, you can do some activities so your product is better quality. So there was one example from Brian already, unit testing. That's a type of testing that developers do in a stage of development right there. It's not testing. That's not us, right? Developers are doing unit testing. It is a part of quality assurance, though, still.
Okay. So
and
QA, sorry to cut you off, Dennis, but QA starts around the requirements, right? And it covers all the way down to the deployment phase and the maintenance phase even, right? All of that is under the umbrella of quality assurance. Testing is just one part of quality assurance.
Yeah, so ideation is basically, there is a business, they say like, okay, we want to build this app. This app is going to be, let's say, Uber. And that app is going to just, users would need to install the application on their phone. Once they about to get a ride, they just click a button and it matches with the closest driver, right, who runs Uber at the same time. And this is the ideation, really. Now this is an idea, right? They don't know like how to do that. This is just an idea. So then they bring it to dev team, basically to us, to all of us, including developers, and say, okay, we want to build this. Like, what do you guys need to build this? And developers start thinking, which is like, okay, should it be like iPhone or Android? This is requirement, right? And they say, okay, let's start with like iOS, let's say. Okay, fine. Should it be like on demand or whatever? And a lot of questions. So those are all requirements. Then once they gather them, they will start thinking, okay, how it should look like, what are the systems on the back end, like what are the databases, and a lot of technical stuff, right? This is like dev stuff. So once they figure this out, they actually start coding, which is development cycle. Once they code that, they ship it to us and they say, this is the initial version of this app. Could you guys play around with this and like give us like whatever feedback? And we now start, installing the application, searching for bugs. Basically, that's what we did on the very first session, right? Just starting with ad hoc and exploratory testing, playing with the app, like, okay, typo is here, like this button doesn't work, this is like crashing right here, and like images are off, and like whatever we can only find, right? We report all of them, and this is our time to shine. So we basically report those issues back, developers fix them, they give it to us one more time, we check it now, okay, it's good to go, we release that to the public. So now you can basically go to the App Store and download it from there and start using, right? Well, no, because it's just the first iteration, right? Because then business will say, okay, customers actually love that and they want to improve. They want to add like different types of cars. They want to do this, they want to do that. We have like these bugs here and every time the cycle basically continues and continues and continues, and for years and for decades sometimes, right? So this is how it goes. So it's basically, it's never ending improvement kind of process of developing software. So some people work for the same companies for, I know, for 10 years, for example.
And just again, to give you guys an idea, right? Quality assurance are the processes, right? There's the different stages when you're involved throughout the life cycle, and testing, software testing is just one part of that entire giant circle of quality assurance, right? So that's the difference between the two. One actually belongs to the other, right? The testing activity is an activity within the quality assurance process, right? So how are we setting up repeatable processes? That's what the difference between QA and testing is, right?
Yeah, and just one more thing here. So every team member contributes to quality, right? So if they cannot give us the requirements, clear requirements, we can build something else, not what they want, right? Who will be happy? Nobody, right? We're just wasting time and money, and all of us are not happy, right?
Right.
So basically everyone, if they provide better requirements, that contributes to the quality of the product. If developers write less less buggy code, it contributes to the quality. If they write unit tests, it contributes to quality. If they do code reviews, and they have a lot of activities on their own that all of them contribute to the quality. Testing itself contributes to the quality a lot as well, right? But it's not fair to say that, okay, we are quality engineers, we are the only one who's responsible for the quality product. No, everyone involved is responsible, basically.
It's like a high stakes game of telephone, right? The customers tells the business tells the developers, and then everybody decides what they're gonna do, right? So from point A to B to C, you could lose that clarity on what it is, where there's ambiguity that presents itself when you play that game of telephone. So that's where we come in. Our job is to make sure that what the business is saying and what the developers are developing is the same thing, because developers don't speak the same language as business people do, right? And we are like the right in between both of those worlds, where we can kind of understand the technical and the more, you know, normal side of things. So our job is to be the stakeholder for the customer. That, you know, we have to come in as we have to pretend to be the customer. And that's where our role, our successful QA is always going to be the one who plays the role of the customer the best. and that's where we come in. All right. Let me see. I thought I saw a question here. All right. So let's kind of go into a bit of a deeper dive on exactly what is it uh, of the actual specific stages, right? So again, the ideation usually is we're not worrying about that for right now. What we're going to concern ourselves is their requirements and the analysis, right? This phase marks the beginning of software development, right? Of the SDLC. Now, in this phase, you're gathering all the information and requirements in order to conceive a concrete expectation of the software product. What does that mean, right? What again, like I explained earlier, right? It's a game of telephone, right? The customer talks to the business talks to to in-house the developers and QA, and we figure out as a team how we're gonna reach how we're gonna achieve and deliver the product that the customer is looking for or that the business is looking for. A lot of times things get lost in translation between business and development, right? Again, because developers don't think uh, like human beings. They think in code, right? So they aren't concerned a lot of the times with how it looks, how it feels, what they're really trying to deliver. They all they care about is this whatever that little portion of the application that they need to work on. Our job is to be part of the requirements gathering, part of the requirements grooming, all these things that kind of that codify or that lock down exactly what it is that the development team is going to deliver. We're part of that. So in an interview, you'll get asked, when do you think QA should get involved in the SDLC? And the answer is during the requirements and analysis phase, right? QA should be involved in this phase at the beginning, so we can kind of be involved in the requirements gathering and also be able to kind of provide any clarity from the team. All right. Yes, we do work. We work with business analysts quite in depth, to be honest. On the manual QA side, a lot of our daily interactions are with the business analysts, right? So this is just an extension of that whole thought process. This is where it all starts.
Yeah, so just to introduce a couple of roles over there. So we are responsible for our own part, which is testing itself. Here, ideation requirements, these parts are managed by product owners, business analysts, or product managers. In short, we usually just call them product people because like analyst, owner, manager, well, those are just titles, right? You never know, because manager can say, hey, I'm not a business analyst, I'm a manager, I'm a big dude. so that's why we just call them manager product. So they are in charge of this. Well, the problem is they don't know how to code, right? So that's why they need developers and testers to make sure the quality, there is no bugs basically. So this is not about coding, it's about an idea.
Right. And that, again, like Dennis was saying, right? They're business people, right? I just like, yeah, they're business people is like the best kind of way to describe them, right? Their involvement comes from the business side, the business aspect. That's their bread and butter, and that's what they deal with. All right. So next up is the actual design and research, right? So once the requirements are nailed down, right? Once we have the initial kind of conversation of okay, this is what the requirements are going to be. Um, the next step is the design, right? This is where the developers and system architects formulate the high level design of the software and system to achieve each of the determined requirements. So this is again where developers and architects, these are the conversations where QAs usually sit and listen to people, arguing, developers basically with each other on how they want to tackle this, right? What's the architecture that we're going to set up as a company to be able to deliver these requirements, to be able to deliver this product or this feature functionality or this this new feature, right? Whatever, how are we going to do this? How are we going to code it? How are we going to develop it? Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, not necessarily we understand much, um, here, but we
Never.
just sit and listen, and they just argue and like,
Yep.
okay, whatever. So some of those things we get, some of them we don't. A lot of things don't even matter really for us. So that's the kind of the whole idea. We have this definition of roles. So if developers, they know how to code, right? They know how to design and all that. So that's why, I mean, yeah, go for it. You know how to do it, right? We know how to test. Business people know how to do business. So
It's like
it's
sausage
just
being made, right? We don't care how it's done. We just want to eat sausage, right? We want to eat hot dog. This is the sausage being made part, right? This is where all the the insides, the everything is getting ground down and putting in the casing. So we don't care about how this, right? We're not involved for the most part being manual QA engineers, right? We are there to do black box testing, right? What happens inside of that? If you guys remember black box testing, what happens inside of that black box we're not concerned with, right? We are there to see how the system interacts with users, right? How can I, the way that I'm interacting with the system, with the application, is it working according to how the customer thinks it should be working? So again, we are definitely part of these conversations. We do definitely sit through these, but our job doesn't come in until later on, right? Where we actually get the product in our hands and we're able to start testing it and whatnot. All right. So now the development phase is the next phase, right? Excuse me. This all starts once the design and everything is completed. The architecture has been kind of set up, and then developers, then you start getting your smaller tasks, right? So again, I'm gonna get to this definition in a little bit, but the way that I like to explain this is building a wall, right? You don't just put up one giant wall somewhere, right? You do it brick by brick. So this is where the different bricks are handed out to different developers, right? Each developer gets a brick that their code brick that they're gonna work on, right? They're gonna develop it, and then it's gonna get merged together in the code, and then you have this giant wall of your application. Everything is given to you right then and there. So that's how I like to explain. So this is the development process. This is where each individual developers, it could be two developers, it could be maybe just a single developer in their company. You may be working for a very small company, right? It doesn't matter, but they're not going to do everything at once, right? They're going to take small pieces and start developing it against the requirements, right? So the design and everything and the requirements will now be translated into code, right? That's where this comes in. That's where this phase comes in. I'm sorry. Um, so again, to continue in the process, we're now in the development phase. Now, again, what's QA doing during this whole time, right? QA at this point is still reading the requirements, writing our creating our test plans, writing our test cases. We're doing all the administrative work that we're going to utilize and we're going to execute once we get the product delivered to us. And right now, it's just development being done. The coders are coding, basically, right? Now, our prime time, testing and bug fixing. Again, the tester's main role is to contrast the output with the requirements and identify the issues. They make sure that the software product behaves exactly as defined in the requirements. So this is where we come in. This is where we shine, right? This is where we eat. I like to say this is where we eat. And that's literally what it is, right? This is all the time that you've spent so far to create your test cases, read the user stories, interact with the business people to get everything nailed down. Now is the time where you come in and you're going to be doing a lot more of that. You're executing your test cases, which means you're running your test cases, following each of the steps that you've created, and making sure that everything that the business thought that they were getting is what they're getting. And then any deviation from that, right? Anything that doesn't match what the requirements are an automatic bug, right? Unless and until the business people kind of give you the feedback, like, what, however it looks right now, it's okay. You are going to you're going to call it a bug, right? It's a defect. It is a deviation from the requirements. Um, Now, is it going to be a lot of times where business people just say, you know what, the way it looks is fine, I don't really care, that's fine. that our job isn't to make the final decision. Our job is to bring up the issues that exist, right? Are developers going to be happy about the fact that you're finding bugs in their work? Never, right? It's never a defect. It's never a bug. They didn't do anything. They didn't mess anything up. They didn't misinterpret anything. Um, so you just you they're just all day long. They're just gaslighting you. That's what they're doing, and that's fine, right? Again, our job isn't to fix anything. Our job isn't to make the final decision on anything. Our job is to bring up the issues that are existing there, so that everybody is aware of what's there in the software, what's there in the product, right? So that's where the bugs come in, the testing comes in. That's where basically is what we're there for.
There is a one trick though, one hack. So if you find a like very serious defect, then probably developers will start respecting you, and ask your opinion, because you basically saved their
You know
whatever,
what?
everything, right?
Yeah.
Because technically, well, we're not competing or we're not fighting with each other. We actually single team. So as a team players, they building the application. We are testing it before it goes to actual customers, making sure that we basically backing them up. So if something is wrong, we just tell them like, hey, there is something wrong here, and they like, oh, I see. Okay, yeah, you're right. And they fix it. So once it goes to customers, it's nice and clean and good looking and smelling good and everything, right? Because otherwise, um, well, it's shameful sometimes, right? And because it's not fun like to read bad, let's say, reviews for your app, saying like your app is buggy and like I hate that so much and all of that. Well, developers are creators, right? If you create something, you don't want to see like these bad reviews, and basically you take it personally sometimes. So in that kind of case, we actually covering them by providing this like, I don't know, second opinion, or just a fallback kind of.
Another example of an interview question, right, is you have to kind of, when you're talking about developers in an interview, you want to refer to them as the way that I've always done it, and to kind of make it seem like they're them make them seem special, is I call them artists, right? If you look at Van Gogh, right, genius, but he cut off his left ear, right? That's kind of what developers are. They're artists in their own right, but they're little off, right? So again, our job is to be the in between developers and business, right? Again, some developers, I mean, for the most part, most developers are going to be pretty nice, right? They're they want you to be good at your job, so you can help them have quality code, right? Others are going to always be um not so nice, right? So again, it's like anything else in the world, right? There's good and there's nice and not so nice people everywhere. But in our instance, we can be great friends with developers, and kind of work with, to make sure that the business is kind of answering the right questions, because sometimes business is like, what, hey, I want a blue line, but I want it to be red colored. And that doesn't make any sense, right? How can you have a blue line that's red colored, right? So that's kind of what it sounds like sometimes when the business people are talking about what kind of functionality kind of they want, the code and all that stuff. So our job is, again, to be between, and that means that we're always the kind of the go between for business to developer and developer to business, right? That's where we really come into play. So that's the main thing here. I'm seeing some questions. You should always be respectful of everyone. So Brian asked a question. You have to show professional respect for their craft and ability in an interview. You're not going to sit there and curse them out, no, right? So you can't do that. But you have to maintain professionalism in everything. You're, even when there's conflict, you still maintain professionalism, right? You were in a corporate environment. There isn't any childish name calling or in personal insults and things like that. You maintain decorum at all times, right? You remain professional, at no matter what the situation is. And again, our job is never to be the decider of any of this stuff, right? Our job is to just bring up these issues. So our responsibility kind of, is on the lower end of the spectrum because we don't have to worry about, what the final decision is going to be. Our job is, hey, look, this is it. It's not a blue, you asked for a blue line, but it's a red line. What do you want to do? And they'll say, okay, you know what? We'll stick with whatever we've been given by development. All right. So the next step is the deployment. So again, once the software is tested and freed from any defects or bugs, it should be ready for deployment, right? Deployment, if you guys are aware, like the military and stuff, deployment is to go somewhere, right? To be able to kind of go on your mission. And the mission for our of our product is to be it what it is, right? So that's the deployment process. It's sometimes when you go to production, it's called the release process, and I release to production, um, prod, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of the thing. These are the different definitions of what they are. All right. So
Yeah,
again,
we will cover those a little bit later.
yep.
For now, yeah, it's a lot of new words, but yeah, deployment, release, I don't know, shipment, right? Shipping, whatever it is, it's
Mhm.
pretty much all about the same. We will talk about the difference in like 3 weeks or so.
Mhm.
So not today.
Right. All right. So that was deployment process, and then production deployment is the next. All right, the final stage of the product of the project. This is where the product is then released to the world. Right. It's gone live. That's the way we describe it. Right. That it's live to production. Again, all the hard work that you've done throughout this whole time, you've at this point gotten approval from everybody. The testing, the QA team has gotten given approval. Developers are good to go. The business has given it the thumbs up, et cetera. So now you're at this point, this project is live and it's gone to consumer. It's gone to the customers, to the people, and this is what we all strive for: to be able to have a product that is, that gets to production. All right. Again, it's the final step. At this point, we aren't doing anything, right? Our job isn't, we haven't much to do except for we do a certain type of testing after it's released to production called a smoke test, which is just a quick check to make sure that everything is basically working. So for the most part, though, we have done our job at this point, and the product is ready for the general public. All right. So after that's done, products being used by customers, the business people, like let's say your C-suite executives, like your CEO, CFO, and these guys, they start looking at the product, and the business people, they figure out, okay, look, we've seen some new functionality, and now we want to add some new things, right? Or let's say you have something in, something was missed in testing or development. Let's say you have like an Amazon, but you guys forgot to put a buy now button. You can still buy products, but you can't do it like a one-click checkout kind of a thing. Or you forgot somehow, like, oh, we didn't even realize we could do that. That's an enhancement, right? That's like, oh, we can make this life easier for customers that are ordering products repeatedly by just doing a one-click checkout. That's called an enhancement, right? So anytime you have a product that's, any improvement, that you always continue to improve your product. Now this is the maintenance and the update portion of it. The update is, again, new stuff that we want to add, and the maintenance is to make sure whatever the existing stuff is doesn't break. So now we're gonna go into under what umbrella the way that we work, right? What is agile? I'm sure some of you have heard of this. What's agile, waterfall, all these things. Um, so again, this is all about process right now, right? We're talking about within the software development lifecycle, within the process that we've set up for the whole company. It's an iterative approach to project management. Now, iterative means repeated, right? Repeated, repeatable, like you're doing it over and over again. Um, each cycle is an iteration, right? So that's kind of the beginning. So and it's an iterative approach to project management and software development that helps team deliver value to their customers faster and with fewer headaches. Uh, Instead of betting everything on a big bang launch, an agile team delivers work in small but consumable increments. Remember, like I mentioned, building a wall, right? You don't just deliver a wall, right? You set it up brick by brick. You put your little cement on there, you add more bricks, and then okay, these bricks are solid now. We're gonna add more bricks, more until we have a full-on wall built. That's what agile is, right? Agile is taking it and breaking it up into pieces and making and setting up those bricks one at a time, and creating this wall instead of what, we've got a prefabricated wall, we're just gonna boom drop it right here in the middle of wherever, and now you guys do it. Now let's say something is messed up, right? Your measurements were off and the wall can't get through whatever passage they have, whatever room they have. Whereas um when you're in agile, you're getting it smaller pieces at a time, right? So you will be able to kind of manage it and figure out where the shortage of things is, where the mistakes are, where you need improvement. And so you're as you see here, right? So the requirements and plans and results are evaluated continuously. So teams have a natural mechanism for responding to change quickly, right? So if your bricks are too massive, your bricks are the size of the Pyramid of Giza or something, you need to resize them, right? That's kind of that's how agile works. So we're seeing results or something, deliverables, things being delivered, functionality being delivered in small increments, like like I said, a brick at a time. And that's how we're able to make sure that we're not completely going down the wrong path. So why choose agile, right? Again, people choose agile so they can respond to changes in the marketplace or feedback from customers quickly without derailing a year's worth of plans, right? So what we don't want to do is, again, deliver this big giant piece of functionality, software, code, whatever, without getting any kind of feedback from the customers, right? So we want to kind of continue showing the business people, like, hey, this is what you're asking for, this is what we're delivering. Okay, oh, this is, you want us to make some changes, okay, sure, then this is what you asked for, now this is what we're delivering. And you iterate, right? You continuously produce and deliver something to them, functionality or whatever, what have you, to be able for them to see, if we're all going down the same path, right? So that is, again, the reason why we choose agile. That's why we continue to, because before this, we're going to get into this, is something called waterfall. I'll actually get into it in a little bit, but again, what you don't want to do is, you don't want to deliver a giant piece of software or functionality, and it turns out that you've been looking at it completely wrong the whole time. So agile versus waterfall, right? MVP and improvement. So MVP stands for minimally viable candidate. Sorry, product. Minimally viable product, right? Yeah. So that means that's the minimum functionality that's available to the customers to be able to use the product, right? So again, if it's Amazon, you're able to search for a product, add a product to your shopping cart, and purchase the product, right? That would be a MVP for Amazon. So the way that waterfall works is you sit there and you define everything, right? Again, like we talked about in the beginning in the SDLC. Then you build everything, and then however long it takes you, 6 months, 9 months, years, 2 years, to develop the product, test it, continue to improve it without ever releasing it, right? So then you've done that, and then you release it at the end of, let's say, a year and a half worth of development and testing, and then the customer sees the value for it. Whereas if we're doing agile, we define it, we build it, we release a small portion, right? That one brick. Then we continue, we define, build, release another brick. And then brick by brick, we put the whole wall. Whereas in waterfall, just boom, the whole thing gets delivered at one point.
So yeah, the good example for waterfall would be operating system, for example, like Windows 10, let's say. So they've been working on Windows 10 for like 5 years or so, like hundreds or maybe thousands of developers working, and then testers are testing and testing for like months. and then they say like, okay, now we kind of ready. So after 5 years of work, they like finally, okay, here we go, Windows 10, use it, right? At the same time, like Uber app, for example, is a completely different one. It goes with iterations. It basically updates on your phone every 2 weeks. And every 2 weeks, you still can use it, but sometimes you can notice changes, sometimes you cannot. Sometimes the UI, the layout of the application completely different, right? But sometimes you can hardly notice a change. But they work on improvements every single day, and they deliver the newer version, the better versions, like every 2 weeks, basically. So if you remember the very first version of Uber app, it was ugly, right? Now, because they've been on the market for a while, they cleaned up the stuff, they introduced very nice features and everything. So it's like very, very nice application. So yeah, here's the image.
So here's kind of the best way to really kind of to repeat what Dennis was saying, right? Agile development is we're both trying to agile and waterfall, and for this product, we're both trying to deliver a yacht, a super yacht, right? With agile, you'll slowly, initially you'll get a little bit of a paddle board or a kayak, I guess is what it is. Then you'll get a delivered a sea-doo or what is that called again? Um, Damn, I'm
Well,
forgetting the word.
you can use it, right?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not
basically the
fancy,
point
but
is, yeah,
you can move around well with certain
exactly. You can go down the
limitations.
river, right? You can go up and down in the river or whatever it is.
Yeah, jet ski,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, jet ski. That's the word. Jeez. And then repeatedly, then you can start going fishing deeper into the ocean towards more of the sea, and then finally you got your super yacht. Whereas in waterfall, you get the foundation being built, then you've got the two different floors being created, and then you have to wire it up and do all the other stuff, and then eventually you get this giant super yacht. Now let's say there's some sort of a design flaw in between this whole area. You have to go back and fix something that you've been working on for like 9 months now, whereas we can slowly improve these processes as we go, right? We can slowly improve this product until we get to the super yacht at the end, right?
Well, yeah, for the business perspective, it's like super cool idea. Why? Because you can start selling these paddle boards like immediately. So let's say to build that, it will take you like a month. In a month, you can start selling them, and you actually get some money, some cash flow, and plus on top of that, you get feedback from your customers, and they say like, hey, it's only like suitable for 2. Hey, it's way too slow. We wanna, to get some speed. We want to do this. We want to do that. It's exhausting, to use it. And so they like, okay, let's put an engine on it. Okay, let's do like some other stuff like audio, whatever. And the next iteration, it's much better now. So you can probably, it sells better, hopefully, right? And it's more cash flow, so you can afford even more. So your business is working actually, which is good. So it's not, well, hopefully it's profitable at this point, because developers and QAs are expensive.
Yeah.
So how business does it? They have some money, right? They invest money, but if you're not selling anything as a business, you will file bankruptcy pretty soon, right? You gotta sell something. You gotta get some cash flow, and this model actually allows business to generate some revenue quickly. So they may cover like all the expenses, they may not, maybe partially, but it's at least it's something. Because sometimes the problem with the waterfall, in like 5 years, you release this yacht and nobody buys it, and you spend like bazillions of dollars and nobody buys that. Why? Because the company B, your competitor, released that like a year ago and they got the market already. So you out of the market and you bankrupt. In this case, if something happens, you can adjust. Another example here was, I don't know if you remember, again, going back to Uber and Lyft, there was another company called Sidecar.
Mm.
Basically, they started doing the same. It was basically the same idea, but then they actually realized that they're not making money, enough money, just because Uber owns like 80% of the market share and Lyft got the other 20. So
Hmm.
they having like some breadcrumbs, nothing basically. So, but the app is there, it's working, and I mean, it just doesn't fly for some reason. So what they did, they actually changed that to delivery model. So instead of providing this like experience for passengers, they start delivering the food. They filed bankruptcy anyways, but at least they tried. Right.
And that's kind of the preferred method, right? There was a question about which two companies and people prefer now. Agile is the industry standard at this point. Most people do want to continue with that.
Yeah, so for the most of you guys, you will be working in an agile environment. Some of you, especially, I started this today's class with the SpaceX. Coincidence? No. So if you work for some aircraft, like medical or food drug administration regulated environments, you cannot do agile. For some of those companies, you cannot do agile, so you have to do waterfall. Why? Because it's more strict, and if it's regulated, you have to have all the paperwork, permits, like whatever, right? So in that case, waterfall is going to be the only way for you to go. But most of you guys will be working in agile. I never worked in a waterfall environment, to be honest, in my entire life. But you never know. They can ask you a question like define what's the difference between agile and waterfall.
Cool. So now kind of going deeper into agile, right? There's he says what kind of let's walk into what the processes within agile are. And a process within agile is um, Scrum. Scrum is a framework that helps teams work together. Much like if you guys are familiar with the rugby, again, Scrum is a rugby term. Training for the big game. Scrum encourages teams to learn through experiences, self-organize while working on a problem, and reflect on their wins and losses to continuously improve. Right. So usually companies, especially when it's a big project, they'll break off into different Scrum teams. Right. Each Scrum team is responsible for whatever they're responsible for, and they will continue to, again, iterate, develop, test, and deliver the product to business, right? So that's what a Scrum team looks like. Again, it's a framework under which if the process, again, another part of the process of how we're going to tackle the product. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more of an example of how Scrum works and what the different Scrum ceremonies are. So there is something called a daily Scrum meeting, right? Each day of the sprint, the team holds a daily Scrum meeting called the daily Scrum, right? Every morning, everybody gets together, the entire team. It could be in a room, it could be over the phone. Right now, everything is remote, so it's over, like, for example, we use Teams, but it's over, whatever video software that we
Zoom.
use.
In my previous company, we just use Zoom.
Zoom, there you go, that's the one. So Zoom, Teams, Skype for Business, all these are all there. Um, So again, and you basically are answering three main questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And do you have any blocking issues? Now, again, just to kind of clarify, you just explained, hey, yesterday I was writing test cases. Today I'm going to be executing those test cases or running the test cases. And yes, I have a blocker. I don't have access to the database, or I don't have access to the product, or the developers haven't delivered the code yet. I don't have a build yet given to me, so that's my blocker right now. Or you could find a bug. You could find a big bug that just kind of breaks everything down, and that becomes a blocker because you can't move forward with your work because you're being blocked by an issue. So that's your daily Scrum meeting, right? So this is the different, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Scrum is the whole process, right? Of basically, you go through these different ceremonies to be able to achieve the product. right? So you have your daily Scrum meeting, and next comes the actually, there's a practice. We're gonna do a practice on this. Dennis, do you want to kind of take a hold of this one?
Yeah, so this is something that you guys are going to be doing every day. In fact, I'm doing this twice a day. Once for Test Pro and another one for my full-time job. So there is nothing to worry about. Well, um, when I just joined the company for the first time, I was so scared to death, really. They're like saying something like, what should I report? You know, but in reality, it's just a quick sync up here. So yeah, what you were doing yesterday, what you're doing today, and if any blockers, right? So for example, for myself, I was preparing the presentation yesterday for today's class. Today, except for the presentation itself, I also was working on LMS. I was going through those classes and figuring out if there is some outdated information. So we did some cleanup with Marina. And as a result, hopefully it's all nice and clean. Because we did some changes and tweaks here and there. For blockers, no, I don't have any other any blockers. Sometimes you may want to say like, okay, I don't know, computer is crashing, or my chair is broken, right? So whatever it is, you don't have access to like Jira or Slack or any other system. Like my company, I didn't have access to Jenkins yesterday, but I needed to run a job over there, and there is nothing. I mean, I know how to do it. It's simple. It's just one click of a button, but I just couldn't do it just because I didn't have access. And this is my blocker. Unless I get access, I cannot do like that particular task. That's it, right? So if there is a blocker, you just report it to team, and they usually like, oh, there's usually one or two people inside of your team. They will say like, oh, I know like what's the issue is, or oh, I know who you need to talk to, or I know like whatever, oh, I know how to do that, I can help you, or okay, if you don't have access, I can just run it for you, for example, right? It will take them a second, but they will unblock you. So basically you kind of back on the track now, because the worst thing you can do is just do nothing and say nothing. So that's the worst thing. Why? Because you just don't have time. You never have time. You have all the you know, the release schedule, the plan. You need all those tasks to be worked on and finished by certain time. And if you just don't do anything and don't say anything, you set yourself a failure, right? That's it. Yeah, that's pretty much. Keep it short and simple. We call it short and sweet. Usually it's like 15 minutes or something long. Morning, usually meeting. You just say like what you're doing, so you get an idea of where are we. Why, again, why it's important. If you're waiting for certain defect to be fixed from developer, and you can just hear it, developer saying, okay, I picked up that bug, I'm working on that, I'm planning to finish that by the lunchtime, for example, today. You're like, okay, I'm waiting for that. So that's kind of the time when I'm waiting for. So hopefully if it's ready by the lunchtime, you can test it and it'll be closed by the end of the day, or even earlier, let's say, right? So this is kind of the idea. It shouldn't be like very very detailed. The opposite. It's very quick sync up.
And it's literally those three questions, right? So it's not like, oh, it's those three questions just at random. That's literally what your stand-up meeting is. Those three questions. What did I do yesterday? What am I gonna do today? And do I have any blockers? So, you know, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's complicated, and so on and so forth, right? So but it's always just those three questions. Very simple. Again, pay attention to your teammates when you guys do start, see how they're responding. You know, company to company differs on how they give these updates, right? My previous company, we used to just say the name of the ERP that we're using and what product we're working on, and that's it. No other details, no other information, nothing like that. So we just say we and sometimes it would get so weird that we just like TLFA. That's what I'm working on today, yesterday, and today, and no Roblox.
It's crazy. Well,
Literally four letters. That's all it was. Because
that's
again,
way too short.
that
Yeah.
company, yeah, that company, nobody liked each other. We're just all sick of each other. So it was like as little as time we have to spend in the same room, the better it is.
I can see that.
We used to have. I was a scrum master, so I used to run those meetings, and our meetings were like 3 minutes for like a team of like nine. And it was just as quick, because nobody wants to be in there.
Yeah, since you touched the topic of the team size, so this is like what it is usually. The Scrum teams are usually not um, does not have more than like 10 team members. Usually it's like one business person, like let's say business analyst or product owner, whatever. A whole bunch of developers, like let's say 7 of them, and 2 testers like us, right? Could be like one automation, one manual, could be both manual, could be both hybrid automation manual. You never know, like whatever it is, but vast majority of the team members are developers. And another thing is basically starting the next week, you guys gonna be split into teams. Well, we don't have that many developers for you guys, but you will get a taste of basically doing daily Scrum meetings. Again, why it's important, guys, it's only two months long boot camp. So if you, let's say, falling behind even for like a couple of days, it can be hard for you to catch up later on. So that's why it's a very fast-paced environment, and it's going to be basically a team of support. So if you don't understand something, if you block with something, your team will help unblock you, or maybe give you some explain something or whatever is needed, so you like, oh, okay, got it. So in 10 minutes you basically kind of catch up and you're ready to continue. And on top of that, so being a Scrum Master is actually, once we start working with your teams, we actually encourage you to pick a Scrum Master. So it's nothing really complicated. It's just literally just gather the team together, figure out the time of this meeting, and then ask, like, be a host basically. Just ask people one by one, like, what did you do? What are you doing? And any blockers, and that's it. Um, Super easy, but it's a very nice bullet point in your resume at the same time. So uh, you're gonna have a team lead support, and those guys are more experienced than you are, so they will help you with all of those processes. And these are very, very important processes. These are very popular interview questions, and these are how pretty much all the companies, the tech companies, are working these days.
Cool. So again, so now moving forward, we are talking, like we know we've mentioned about that it's a shorter work cycle. You do quick releases and things like that. We work in what are called sprints. Now, sprints are exactly what you think they are, right? When you think about running sprints, it's a quick run, and that's exactly what this is supposed to be, right? It's a quick run of 1 to 4 weeks where you are going to quickly work on these items, get requirements, deliver code, and then develop code and then test it and release it. That's the plan here, right? So that's what we're trying to do. Again, right? It's on average, it's usually about 2 week sprints is what you work in. Sometimes you'll work in a week-long sprint. Sometimes you work in 4 week-long sprints. It's all there. It's all possible, right? In my current position, we've done multiple 1 week sprints because we started the project literally on the ground floor. It's called the Greenfield project. So it's completely starting from scratch. So there was certain times where we did a few iterations of our sprint in 1 week sprints. So we were completing the work that we needed that was carryover that was done because it was such huge projects that we were picking up, et cetera, et cetera. So it is the short period of time when a scrum team works to complete a set amount of work. That's what a sprint is, right? Again, it's a very popular interview question is how long were your sprints that you were working in? 2-week sprints is the average. That's usually the best response that we do. That's usually what happens. All right. Again, what's the different sprint phases? Again, there's a lot of different ceremonies, and this is going to be discussed in more detail later on, because again, all of these are called sprint ceremonies, right? What are the phases? You've got your product backlog. Now, what does a backlog mean? Every time you've heard of the work it's where it's a list of items that you need work that are just a list of stuff that's there, right? It's there that needs to be worked on. It needs to be moved forward, and then you pull in, like you see here, this top layer, right? This top brick. We take that brick and we put it into the sprint. Now this becomes the sprint backlog, which means in this 2-week sprint, for example, we're gonna work on this brick, right? This is what we're gonna try to deliver. Now the sprint starts. It's a 2 to 4 week sprint, right? Within the sprint, you have your daily stand-ups, right? So that's kind of a daily process that cycles through every single day of the sprint for 2 weeks, right? And then once you're done with the sprint work, the brick has been completed and ready for production or delivery, potentially shippable product increment, right? That brick is now available to be added to the rest of the however much the wall that's been built, and you can add that brick on top now. That's kind of the, again, that whole ideology of, a brick at a time makes a wall, right? Now there's different ceremonies. Again, they're called ceremonies. I'm using that word on purpose, because they're scrum ceremonies. They're not events and stuff. I mean, a lot of times you'll hear that. There's grooming, where you sit down and you kind of clean up your backlog, right? You go through your stories and you make sure whatever requirements that you have are clear and concise and not confusing and ambiguous and anything like that. Then you have your planning, where you sit and you decide, okay, you pick from your product in the planning ceremony. You pick from your product backlog and you add it to the sprint backlog. That's your planning. Stand-ups, obviously, like we mentioned, stand-ups that are going to be there daily. Um, Again, and then you have your demo. Every time something's developed, any of the brick is completed, you demo it. The developers demo it, and then at the end of everything, when all the work has been done, we do a retrospective and we look back at what we've done in that particular sprint. Again, let's kind of go into more detail. I'll give you the quick and dirty. Let me give you a little bit more detail. All right. In this stage, the team defines the requirements. Again, sorry, what is planning? In this stage, the team defines the requirements for the new product, the new software, the new feature, whatever it is, and the amount of cost and resources required. It also details the risks involved and provides subplans for softening those risks. A software requirement specification document is created. Um, so what you're doing in the planning portion, right, is you're thinking about, okay, let's see, I've got to keep it very clear, I've got 2 developers, I've got 2 QAs, and how much time are they able to be here? How much work can they take on and successfully deliver? And we're gonna sit and plan and see what what we can do, right? How much work can we really do in this 2-week sprint? That's what the planning phase is about. So that's what the planning is. Again, you talk about the risk involved. If you take on too much work and you find a bunch of bugs, then you can't deliver anything, right? If you take on too little and you get done too quickly and you don't have more work prepared, then you've got people just sitting there and making free money, basically, right? You're not utilizing your resources properly. So this is what the planning phase is really about. Like how, what are we working on? How are we going to work on it? Who's going to work on what? How much capacity do they really have to work on something, etc. So now during the planning phase, what does QA do? QA, we do what's called a feasibility study of the requirements. And what does that mean? It's a fancy way of saying we read the requirements and see if they make any damn sense, right? The feasibility means, can this be achieved, right? Are they asking for something sane? Or are they asking for something crazy like a blue line that's red, right? That makes no sense. So the next bullet in this would be the properly express functional requirements and review the gap between features so that they can be analyzed as early as possible. So again, taking those requirements and seeing what's already there, right, and uh, what problem are we trying to fix, and are we doing it the right way? Again, we become familiar with the product, and seeing what it entails, and we have to be the ones that kind of have the understanding between the two, right? Risk analysis forecasting. We're sitting there, we're trying to figure out, like, if we try to tackle something like this, is it going to slow us up? I'll give you an example of taking on undue risk. We were developing a product, and we decided that we were going to completely change how we're going to turn into it from a installable a desktop product to a cloud product, right? So that requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of code change, and it requires a lot of testing. So now, if whatever bugs that were already there could no longer be fixed and released, because we had such a giant shift in software and code, that we had to test all of that and before we release it and before we fixed further bugs. So we basically had to hold off on fixing bugs for like 6 months, which was terrible planning, but also why I don't work at that company anymore. Um, because again, we lost customers because they were sitting there and they couldn't do something for basically 6 months, and that was our own fault because we screwed that up. All right. Um, Again, we also established the environment requirements, like what are we looking for? What do we need? Do we need our own QA environment for testing? Right? There's different environments that are created. Different tools are needed. Different access is required. Right? So we need to be able to access the database. We need to be able to access, have a lane basically for our own QA environments where they can, deploy the builds for QA where we can test them, et cetera, et cetera, right? Different environment variables. We also prepare the higher level test plan, including the risk and tool used in the project. Again, we are doing this on a higher level, right? We're looking a bit higher on high level means looking on the grand scheme of things, right? The big picture. And this is where we do a little bit of the planning, and it's like, okay, how the who, what, where, and how. That's what I like to call the test planning, right? That's what this is. And then finally, we identify the type of testing to be carried on the project. Are we going to be doing manual testing? Is there an automation project that's in place? Are we going to do any sort of security testing? Again, there's all different types of testing we're going to get into in more detail later on, but this is just to kind of give you guys an idea. So startups don't play by any rules. So I'm gonna really dwindle this down. Startups have no rules. They do whatever the hell they want, however they want, whenever they want. So if they've decided that they've got some angel investor that's going to put in $50 million for them to deliver something, they're not going to plan. They're just going to work on tickets. They might not even create tickets. It might just all be in emails. It might just be on notepads. It might be what are those things, post-its. I've seen startups do work literally on post-its on a wall, and you pick it up and you move it around. So startups are, 99% of the time they're disruptors. So they don't do things according to how everybody else does them. They do things their own way. They don't follow any planning rules. All right. And then again, going back to the Scrum ceremonies, grooming. What is grooming? Grooming is basically refinement. The reason why it's struck out like that is because grooming and refinement means the same thing. When we have created our user stories and prioritized our user stories in the product backlog with the most valuable item at the top, we want to move on to the next step in the agile development process.
If you guys are in EU, so in England, I believe the grooming is kind of not the very professional definition, which is related to very bad things. Don't want to even tell that. So that's why they changed that word to refinement. So in some companies you will hear like refinement, especially if you work with like people from Europe, they usually say refinement and not the grooming. So it's just a little, little trick. You can impress on the interview. You can say like refinement, and probably they know what it is, but it's not everyone uses that word. So I would consider it to be a little bit more advanced, maybe. So it shows your, involvement into the process. But in United States, it's not critical at all. So
We still say grooming, um, or at least I do on a weekly basis. So maybe something's wrong with my company. Um, Again, it's an grooming is or refinement in this case. It's an open discussion between the development team and the product owner, right? So we sit back and we decide. We have a conversation on what exactly are we, do we need to be worked on in the future, and to see if we can kind of clarify those user stories or those stories to be able to so that when it's time to work on it, we can just pick it up from one lane and put it in the other, and we don't have to sit there and discuss the amount of work that needs to be done. Right? Grooming is just a discussion that this is what we want to get done. How, let's clean up and see what exactly they're asking for, and take it from there. Right? So this includes integrations, any kind of user interactions, any kind of UI stuff, whatever it is. Um, Again, it's just discussion to be able to kind of narrow down exactly, or nail down exactly what we're going to work on. All right, so that's the grooming portion. Again, that's one ceremony. It doesn't happen every day. It doesn't happen even weekly. Sometimes it can happen maybe every couple of weeks. Sometimes it can happen multiple times a week. It just depends on the company, but it does happen often. So just to keep that in mind.
yeah, so I would say grooming not necessarily will be tied to your schedule, because so if you work on a 2-week sprint, grooming is basically for the next sprint. Is figuring out what are you going to be doing in the future, maybe not even for the next sprint, but even like further away. So it's just basically reviewing all those things that business wants, and you can have like thousands, I'm not joking, like thousands of issues or tickets or desires in the backlog from the business point of view, and like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and this app should be also doing this and that, and so on. So you just keep adding those items into your backlog, and then you will be reviewing them. So basically reviewing, finalizing. So once you have basically time, let's say for the next sprint, you can actually pick some of them and work on them immediately without going back and forth and like, hey, you wanted this, like, what does it mean? Because it's like says blue and red line, right? No, this is like grooming part. You will ask like, hey, it says like blue and red, which is contradicts, like, what do you think? Is there like by design, or it's a mistake, or maybe you meant green? Sometimes they will say, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. I was thinking, but we decided to go with some other approach. So you basically finalize that task, so it's kind of workable now, right? That's kind of what it is.
So again, to show you guys in a more visual fashion, right, what grooming or refinement looks like. So you've got your new user stories here, again, in response to newly discovered needs. Now, this is done again in a fashion where the rest of the team is not involved. It's only the business people. They create this document, then the item gets reviewed as part of the backlog. Um, uh, Again, this is not in any given order, right? But this is how it kind of you do it. You kind of prioritize the stories and how it needs to be worked on. Let's say it's something that you didn't realize that you needed or the customer needed, and it turns out it's a very important thing. So then you take it and you put it at the top of the backlog, like, hey, we need to work on this next. It's very important. Um, Again, also if it's too large of a story, then we split them into different smaller stories. Again, going back to the same idea, like I mentioned with the bricks, it's the smaller. If it's a too large of a brick, if it's too large of an undertaking, then we need to split it up into smaller pieces. We do estimates on the stories, estimates or level of estimate, which is called an LOE, level of estimate. Most people use the acronym LOE, where you say, hey, you know what, it's gonna take this long to work on it, including development and testing, etc. So again, splitting up those stories, and here we go. And then moving the items to the top of the backlog that are ready for delivery. Right, anytime that stuff that's been done or that needs to be that's up next is taken and put at the top of the backlog.
Yeah, because basically if you have thousands of stories, it will take you like 10 years. So you gotta be, you gotta figure out like what is the most important that you will pick up like immediately, basically, right? The next sprint maybe, or sometimes even without waiting for the next sprint, and start working on that, right? So the priorities is the key there. You cannot work on everything at once, and so that's why.
So then how do we quantify, right? How do we say, look, okay, this is what this is how long it's going to take a story to be done, to be developed and created and tested and all that. We assign it story points. We give it a number. Basically, it's a metric, right? We use that shows to project management and um, to the business people, like, hey, this is a big thing. It's going to be like a giant point thing. Now, what are the different points? We're going to get into them in the next couple of what you call it, slides. But in a simple term, it's just a number that you give to a ticket, right, to a user story that defines how big the level of effort is to work on it. So that's the reason behind. That's the story point. That's how we know. That's how we quantify exactly how much work we're going to need to do, or how much work this particular story requires. Each story point represents a normal distribution of time. Again, one story point could represent a range of 4 to 12 hours. Sometimes it's actually a little bit. I've read this a couple of times where it's like 2 story points is 10 to 20 hours. Um, Again, the point themselves don't equal an exact number of hours. So let's say, going into the Fibonacci sequence, that's what we use, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 40, and 100. 40s and 100s are very rare, and it's actually usually not 21; it's 20. Um, but 20s are 2 weeks. Usually, they're about 2 spring weeks, which is about 10 business days, right? And then 40s are usually much longer than that need to be broken down, right? Again, story points are relative to the effort of work that it needs. Like, so a 1 could be something that's a very quick fix. It's just like a color change, right? This color needs to be go from blue to green, right? A 2 would be that you need to kind of get in the code and change the buttons dimensions, or change the buttons image. So it might be a little bit more work. And then 3s require a little bit more work, and so on and so forth. They kind of cascades up, right? I don't know if cascade is the right word. It kind of bubbles up, right? As more effort is required, the higher the story points become. Now, a 20 would be something like I mentioned, right? The one-click checkout for Amazon, that could be a 20, because they have to check for different products, make sure it's not out of stock. It takes a lot of testing because we need to go in and test it. So there's a lot of work that's required, and that's how these story points are kind of situated, right? So another way to do it is t-shirt sizes, right? Small is a 1 to 3, a medium is a 5 to 8, large is a 13 to 20, and XL is 40 plus. In my current company, the way we do it is we do it with animals. So we've got dogs, baby chicken, we've got whales, we've got lions. So that's how we decide to do it, right? It's just different sizes. Each company does it differently, but the basic measurement is the same, right? A 1 to 3 is usually like a day's worth of work, or about a half a day's worth of work. 5 to 8 is usually about a day's worth of work. Again, it doesn't mean 5 to 8 hours or 1 to 3 hours. It's just kind of how it's structured. Again, all these things are utilized slightly differently in different companies, right? For the most part, a 20 or a 40 is a pretty big deal. Some companies take on 40s, others avoid it like the plague, and they have to break it down. They have a rule set in place, like, okay, if it's a 40-point story, it needs to be broken down into smaller pieces. We're not going to work on a 40-point. It's just too big of a risk.
Yeah, so in most of the companies, actually, if the number, roughly, if the number of days in the sprint, like working days, so let's say 2-week sprint has 10 business days. If you estimate a story like, let's say 13, greater than 10, right? It means that you're doing it wrong. You should split it into like smaller pieces, smaller chunks, and then estimate every single one. Ideally, you only want to have only like one story points on your board. So basically, instead of like, again, that's why the difference between waterfall and agile. Here, you're splitting the work, and by little, every day you're delivering some result. So that's why you're not taking like 20, 40, and so on, because it means that you're going to be working for like 2 months, because 40 is basically 2 months, right? 2 months, and there is a chance that you don't deliver by the end of 2 months, because people are usually overestimate themselves. They feel like, it's a piece of cake, and then they stuck for 3 days. That happens a lot.
Yep.
So in that case, the price of so for business, let's say they say, okay, it's 40, and they say, okay, it's 2 months, like, okay, doable. And then after 3 months, you're like, oh, I'm still working on that. So the budget is doubled now. That's what not they kind of agreed on, right? If they knew it's going to be double, they probably, well, it depends. Sometimes if they know it's like too much of work, they will just say, okay, screw that, let's do something else instead. So it's their decision, but we are estimating the effort here. We're saying, okay, for us it will take like the think what you want, it will take us like 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, and they say, okay, that's fine, you can work on that. Or if you say like, oh, it's actually 2 months, they say, oh, okay, no, maybe something else. It's better to work on these 5 tasks rather than that huge one. So they decide.
And just a quick answer to one of the questions. If the question was asked, like, who gives the estimates? We all do as a team, right? So the developers and the QAs get together. We have the planning meetings, or the backlog grooming meetings are usually the ones where you give your sizes, right? You give your level of estimates, your LOEs. You're like, okay, you know what? It's gonna take, it's a 1 for development, but maybe there's extra work for QA involved. So it should be a 3 because there's an extra effort involved in testing something. Like, for example, we at my current position, right? We have like different filters that we use for doing searches, and the development work on the filters themselves is not that much, right? They're just adding or removing an option, or adding a filter or removing a filter. It's pretty easy for them. But for me on the QA side, it's tough because I have to test different on different devices, on mobile and desktop, different browsers, and just so the level of effort that it's going to take and the amount of time it takes to toggle between different devices and different browsers is a lot more than the level of effort it takes to develop the product. So if they say a 5, I say a 8, right? Because that's kind of where they might even say a 3 and I can say an 8. So it's not a matter of like you kind of just going with the flow. You have to kind of estimate the right amount of time, and then you have to give yourself some cushion, because things will go wrong. You will find bugs. There'll be issues that will block you, and you can't move forward because and your estimate kind of goes to down the crapper because you've been blocked for like 2 days. There's been times where I've had an issue come up that's blocked me for multiple days at a time. So that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, we had a couple of times we had the issue when like login didn't work, let's say, and there is nothing you can do with the application if login doesn't work. Basically, the whole entire company, like 2,000 people, were blocked because for 2 days couldn't do a thing just because login didn't work. Well, developers did some improvements and they break it, and then it didn't go, smoothly as they thought it will go. So it happens sometimes.
So we're actually we're gonna do this practice on grooming. Dennis, do you think we have enough time to?
Yeah, let's do that real quick.
Okay. So I'm gonna send you guys the link in in the chat, so you guys are able to get it. Please go ahead and get to this link. Actually,
Just to
hold on.
make it quick, let's do, I don't know, like 10 people, not more than that. So whoever comes first,
Yeah.
because that's how it's usually in the company. Otherwise, if we're gonna wait for more people, then it will take longer. But this is a real tool that we actually use in one of our companies. I don't know, Nadir, have you worked with those?
No, I only use.
Sometimes actually, I know you guys because it's like engineer number 15, right? It's 15th course, and some of the people like, what are you talking about? Like Scrum poker? Like, are you drunk or whatever? Hi. No, I mean, it is what it is. This is how companies work. In some companies, they actually have a deck of cards, like the real ones. But those are cards like Scrum poker cards, not like poker card, not like a Texas Hold'em, but the real Scrum poker cards. I thought it's like a joke, but no, I actually seen that a few times in different companies. So Azad, do we have a storyboard?
Yeah, you guys can go to the.
Oh yeah, sorry guys. I put an extra link in there. Please follow Azad's link and not the one that I sent.
Yeah, it's the same link. I just put it to the available to the public. Yeah, Nadir, if you can go to the Jira and open the QA-15.
I don't know if I have access to.
It should be public access, so you should have access to that.
So yeah, we're going to create Jira accounts next week. For now, we will just demonstrate, just because this particular class today is very, very tight to the actual. Maybe Azad, could you give him?
Do you want to just drive Azad from here?
Give me a second.
Sure.
And this is how companies work. They open up the Jira board with all the tickets, and then they go grooming and planning. Sometimes it happens at the same time. Sometimes it's those are two different activities, but basically you're just reading what the ticket ticket is basically like a task, right? It just it's like a card where hopefully everything is explained, because in some companies it's such a mess. You read it, you have no clue what they meant. So you have to follow up with 100 questions just to figure out what is this ticket is about. But you just read the ticket. Basically, developers say like, oh, okay, I see what they want. So this button needs to be like different shape in a different place, and that one should be removed. So let's say they say like, okay, probably for developers it will take like 2 days. Well, two story points, right? And you as a tester reading that, okay, so basically what I need to do to test it, the same thing, go to that page. So now button is here, it should be over there now, and it should be different color and different shape. So, okay, sounds simple, right? So you just say, okay, like 1 point for QA. So you basically come up with 3 points total. So this is like the Scrum poker. And the whole thing here is that because you have a team of, let's say 10, right? Business analyst does not participate in this activity. It's it's illegal, right? They cannot force you. They actually ask you like, what do you guys think it will take you? They're not saying like, oh, I know it should be like done in 2 days. No, the opposite. They ask you, but once you estimated that you are committed to it, right? You kind of promised that you reviewed the task, and you kind of guarantee that it will take you for development and for testing together like 3 story points, which is kind of, let's say, roughly 3 days, right? Plus minus. So business can rely on the data because they know like how much money you make, right? They have budgets and all that. They know what they promise to customers. So they can now make a decision based on what you're saying.
Yep.
Basically, I don't know if you hired I don't know, electrician or plumber, you just show him like what you want, and they say like, okay, it's gonna cost you like this much of money, and it's gonna take 2 days, right? This is basically like very, very roughly that's what it is, except for the money, because you are usually like full-time employee. It's clear like they're not gonna pay you more, right? It's gonna be just a matter of time basically.
Okay, guys, so this is our Jira, and you will have an access starting the next week. So like right now, I'm just gonna demonstrate it to you, and you will just see that it exists. And this is your future Jira board. And for as a demonstration of grooming, we have a sample of 3 tickets. I mean, they're not real development tickets. They are more like your homework tickets that you need to be that you need to finish until Thursday. And the first Jira ticket is basically, let me actually open it here.
Yeah, this is exactly what it's done. So they just open up this ticket and you read it and you ask questions if needed. It's the best time to ask questions.
Yeah, so basically here it says finish SDLC intro section in LMS, right? So you need to go to this link. I mean, I am kind of like in the role of product manager, right? So I'm kind of like explaining you what needs to be done here. And if you have some questions, you can ask and I will try to clarify it for you. So what needs to be done here? You need to open this link. This is SDLC intersection in LMS, right? And what needs to be done here, just read the text, watch videos, take notes for yourself. And after you're done, just hit mark complete button, right? Which is right here. Okay, so this is your homework. That's what you need to do in scope of this ticket. Okay, makes sense so far, guys? Like, does the ticket itself make sense for you? Like, do you understand what I'm want to do in this ticket? You can just send plus in the chat. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's estimate how long do you think it's gonna take you, right? So we're gonna open the Scrum Poker. Okay, let me.
And yeah, what you need to do is select a card with a number of days it's gonna take you. You think it's gonna take you. The trick here is that's why it's called poker. You don't influence kind of each other at this point, because if you start saying like, oh, it's so easy, some people, you know, can be influenced by you and they can say, oh, okay, it's 1 point or 2 points or whatever you say, they can follow you, right? That's exactly the opposite. You want to collect the responses so they are don't, you know, like whatever people really think it will take, because you will get different responses, and that's the whole game here. To gather as much the responses as, I mean, basically every person, team member will give their own point, right, or 2 or 3, some estimation, and you will start asking like, okay, why you think it's 3? Maybe we don't know something, maybe we missed something. So it kind of encourages the conversation within the team.
Might be too many people in the list.
Maybe, yeah. Let me open the homepage again.
Well, 10 didn't work.
Yeah, Scrum Poker is also application, guys. It may not handle stress testing as well of many.
Yeah, basically what we're doing, it's a performance test or stress test, because we crushed it, right?
Does it work for you guys? Dennis, Nadir, can you open it, or it's only me?
Maybe let's do the following. I don't know. Let's do within 3 of us, maybe just to demonstrate how it works, so it goes quickly, but it's not different.
I don't think it's working for me either. It's still trying to load.
Like completely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's still.
Okay, guys, could you please close the application?
Yeah, it's too many people in there.
Yeah, it's probably too many people. It's just not. It's free application. It wasn't built, you know, with the scalability in mind.
Yeah, they expect like no more than 10 people probably, which is gonna be typical Scrum meeting.
So guys, yeah, please let's close. Please close the app. We will show you how it works, but not all together.
Yeah, site is down.
Okay.
This is exactly what happened. Okay, guys, we can actually we can use chat probably, and later on we can show you how it looks here.
Nice.
Yeah, so just not spend too much time on that. Okay, let's go back here, right? Let's go back to our presentation, and let's remember that we're using a Fibonacci numbers, and we need to estimate like basically like roughly how many days, right? So one, it usually means like one working day, right? Or two, meaning like 2 working days, three meaning like 3 working days, and so on and so on. I mean, it's like typical estimation, right? Sometimes it's not the full day. Maybe for some companies, it's like 1/2 of the day, but usually it's one day, right? And from your understanding this ticket, right, like how many days do you guys think it's gonna take you? So you have option 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. You can just put in the chat like, okay, I see in the Zoom chat it's like a bunch of ones, and someone actually put 2 days. You guys are in minority who thinks it's gonna who think it's gonna take more than 2 days. And if you have like any valid reason why do you think it takes more than 1 day, you can just write it down in the chat, like why we need to estimate it as a 2 days, not 1 day ticket.
Yeah, exactly. Since everyone now can see the number, now we kind of we defeat the purpose of poker itself, because now we're influencing each other, which is, to be fair, kind of that's a kind of not the best practice. In some companies, they do, like paper, rock, and scissors kind of thing. So they just 1, 2, 3, and they just show on the fingers, using the fingers like 1, 2, 3, like 2 all together all at once. Otherwise, again, if you kind of don't throw the number right there, but you like start looking and you see like all of them and throwing 3, you're like, okay, 3, right? So no, like 1, 2, 3, and like 2, 4, or 3, or 1. So this is kind of the game, and it's a real thing. We're doing it. So for now, for example, in my company, we're doing it on a daily basis. We are in the planning stage. We're planning for the next 3 months. Basically, we're reviewing like a whole bunch of tickets, and we're doing it for 2 hours every day. It's a lot of overhead, but this is basically the only way to figure out for business, like, okay, what needs to be done? Are we capable to do this? Because the resources are limited, time is limited, right? It's expensive at the same time. So we just want to basically break it down to these feasible tasks so they can plan accordingly for like 3 months. Because if we say we cannot do like this much within 3 months, they will probably drop it or redesign something or rethink something.
Yep. Okay, I don't see any valid reason why we need to estimate it more than 1. So I guess I will just pick 1, and it's going to be 1 point.
And it's usually again, team is like no more than 10 team members, and you kind of have to agree. So the whole point of poker to throw a number and to get inconsistencies. Once you get some inconsistencies, you talk about them, but the end result here, the whole entire team understands the complexity, like how long it will take. So they will all agree collectively, like let's say 1. Right?
Yeah. 2 days to be safe, Rina. Like, what do you think it's like? What's not safe for you? Like, why do you think like to be safe you need 2 extra days? Like, what can go wrong in your opinion? Like, if you don't agree, just raise your voice. Let me know. But until I will set the points right. Okay, let's continue with next ticket. So this one is 1 day. Let's go to the next one. So it says finish SDLC phases in LMS. So let's go to the description. It says go over the text, understand what type of SDLC phases exist, right? Let's open this link. Okay, so we don't have any videos here, right? Just a bunch of text that you need to go over, and you have a small graph here, right? Any questions, guys? Does it make sense? All clear? Well, guys, as a QA, you need to actually create as much questions as you can. Like, let's say it doesn't say like, do you need just to read it, right? Or you need to memorize it, or you need to learn it like word by word, right? Because it's maybe the interview questions, right? Maybe you will have a test after that. Like maybe you need to be prepared for a test. Like you just need to clarify, like, do you need just to read it or do you need to just memorize it? These kind of questions. Because if you need just read it or if you need to memorize it, it will take more time, right? So you need to take it to consideration.
Yeah, what if you need to pass an exam right after? Will that cost $500? I mean, that changes the game completely, huh? Out of your pocket. I mean, probably not out of your pocket, but I did the Agile Scrum exam to become a Scrum Safe 4.5 practitioner. And that is paid exam basically provided by company, even though it's not my money, but I know there is an exam and I can get a certificate for that, which is kind of some achievement, right? And of course, I spent like basically two days just like learning because I know there is an exam and only one attempt for me. So if I screw it, then I would need to first of all spend even more time and then spend more money. So and it's different game now, right? If it just read it for fun, well, okay.
Yep. Okay, answering my own question, like you just need to read it. You don't need to memorize it, and there's no tests. There's actually a poll that you need to pass, but you don't have to memorize all the text for it. Just read it. That's actually a very good question from Andre. He asking like, do we need to take to consideration that we need to finish previous task, right? Which also gonna take you 1 day. Andre, so you don't need to take it to consideration because you are estimating each ticket individually, right? And this is just estimation. You may not work on that on the next sprint, right? And you just need to treat each ticket differently. They're not dependent from each other. Okay, guys, ready to vote? 1, 2, 3. Put your numbers, and I'm gonna put estimate. Okay. Okay, I see majority of ones. If you disagree, you have 3 seconds to. 1, 2, 3. Okay, just one.
And guys, one more time. This is not a number of hours. This is basically one means within 1 day. Even if it takes 1 hour or 2 hours, it still will be 1. If it takes you like 1 day, you think like 1 day and 1 hour, then it's probably not 1 anymore.
Yep.
And if you feel like it may take you a little bit longer or like 1 day, but I don't know, you don't go for lunch, let's say, that probably you want to go with 2. So it's better to give you some, as Nadir said, like some cushion, some time, because otherwise you can get asked, right?
Okay. And the last one for today, finish homework practicing Scrum meeting in Elements. That should be more interesting. Okay, the same description, open it, practice SDLC, take notes for yourself, and hit mark complete button.
Jira has poll itself, huh?
Yep. Okay, so what it says, follow the format, what was done yesterday, what I'm going to do today, do you have any bloggers starting next week? We are going to create small teams, blah, blah, blah. This is something that you need to do on daily basis and so on. I will give you like a couple more seconds just to go over this description. And if you have any questions, just write it down. If you don't, we can just vote.
Yeah, starting next week, you're gonna be doing this every day, guys. So. Nice.
No teams yet. Yeah.
Yeah, great. No, that's a good one. Yeah.
It's a good one. Yeah. Okay. Does it make sense for everyone? Like, do you guys have any questions? Because it's confusing even for me, but I actually created this ticket, right?
And just today, my company, the product owner was like, "Hey guys, so I want you to review these two tickets. I feel like it's very important for us, not a big of a deal." And he showed them to us, and there's like a silence. And I was the first one actually. You know what? I feel it's over 21, so it's epic. So we cannot work on that. It's like I don't even know like how to estimate this. It sounds like 2 months of work or something. And the developers were basically saying the same. Oh, you know what? We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to do the other thing. So it's probably 7 tickets total with like every single 1, 2, 3 points or so. So it's like it's way too more. Way too much. So he was like, okay, that's not what I expected. But I mean, if you say that, then probably I have no options, right? So we actually rethinking the whole thing. Maybe it's not even gonna be, addressed soon.
Okay, here we go. I finally see the questions that I was expecting to see, like how can we practice if we don't have any team, right? It doesn't make sense completely. And it actually says here, you're gonna have a team like a next week. So basically you can't do that in this week, right? So it doesn't make sense. My question probably just go over, just understand it and be prepared to start to attend stand-ups starting next week when you will have a team. For now, you don't need to do that. You just need to read it and understand and start to practice next week.
Yeah, so for now, I would say, again, we just started. So of course, if we give you like real development ticket, we will work with them later on, but you're just not ready, right? If we throw you that ticket right now, we will throw you under the bus because it will have a lot of things. You have no idea how to test this. You've never seen this application before, and so on and so forth. It's going to be a blocker, right? So we're kind of giving you an idea how it works right now. So we will start, shifting slowly into the piece by piece, one by one. We will do recap and another one. And once we teach you everything, we will do another huge recap for the whole entire course. So piece by piece, but then integration kind of stage all together. So it will start making sense once we integrate everything in one.
Yep. Okay, here's a question in the chat, like where I am reading these messages. I am reading through the Zoom chat, guys. It's all here. But some people, they don't send messages publicly. They just send it to us. That's why you may not see some of the messages from Zoom. Okay, guys, ready to vote? Like any more questions? If you don't have any questions, let's just vote our last ticket for today and we will continue. 1, 2, 3, just put your numbers. Okay, 1, 1, 2, 3. If you guys think it's more than 1, just write it down. Why do you think it's more than 1 day? Otherwise, I'm just gonna select 1.
Well, for this particular ticket, in my opinion, it's like 1 minute, right? That's your basically report. Nothing else.
Okay, 1 it is. And here is a tricky question, guys. This homework needs to be done until our third session is gonna be on Thursday, right? So today is Tuesday and today is evening. You're not gonna do it today. Probably gonna do that tomorrow, right? Maybe on Thursday. So we have in total 3 tickets with 3 days, right? How can we finish it by Thursday? Here's my question. Like my question to the audience. If I'm a product manager and I assign you like 3 tickets, right, which takes more days than it was estimated, and I tell you like, hey, it needs to be done until Thursday, what would you say? Yeah, you can do overtime, but I mean, do you really want to do overtime every sprint at work? Like, we promised you the perfect work and life balance, right? In the first webinar. Yeah, so that's not possible, guys. If it's estimated, if 3 tickets is estimated as 1 day, it's not possible, right? Without overworking and so on to finish up until Thursday. So in real life, you're not gonna take all of them to the sprint, right? So you're just gonna take maximum 2 of them because you can't finish all of them, right? Because it's out of capacity, and you just need to pick like 2 of them instead all. But I mean, because it's a boot camp, we are we a little bit intense, and that's why it's gonna take you. You have to finish it by Thursday. I mean, it is what it is. Sorry, guys, but in real world, you're not gonna be. You're gonna select only tickets that you can that needs to be done, that you can finish.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good thing because for both, for management, they can really plan accordingly, right? For the future, for the next sprint, for the next months, and so on. For you, you don't overwhelm yourself because you know exactly, you agreed that it will take you like 1 day, it's clear, and it should take you not more than 1 day, so you're safe, right? And if they say like, no, do more, you just say like, hey, I cannot, I'm at capacity, I cannot take anymore. That's it. And this is like the beauty of that. It benefits both parties actually involved. So don't take it. I've heard some comments like, hey, that's for like managing to track us, you know, to keep us busy. I mean, yes, but at the same time, it actually benefits you as well. It saves you, you know. Well, just do the grooming and planning part carefully, right? Don't promise anything crazy that you'll do today and it takes you 5 days. Don't be that hero, you know, like, no, I'm gonna do it. It's simple. I'm gonna like stay overnight and work on that. No, 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 and no. Exactly. Don't take too much of work. This is what it is for.
Okay, guys, does it make sense? Like, do you understand the grooming now? Like, do you understand how like software companies estimate tickets? Okay, so let's move on. You will have this is your homework where you need to finish SDLC section in LMS. So you pretty much will go over the theory again. And
you click mouse or
oh yeah, animation.
Yeah. Some of the text is missing.
Yeah. So basically, this is going to be your homework. You need to practice daily script. I mean, pretty much just open LMS and go one by one. And it's mostly just theory. Just read it through, try to understand it. If you have some questions, just ask us in a Telegram chat.
Yeah, you will actually find out that we have Kanban and waterfall models in LMS as well. Again, you can be asked on the interview, but those are not the most popular ones. Kanban is pretty popular for startups, but it's very simple. So Agile, Scrum is a little bit more complicated with all these estimations and everything. Kanban doesn't have those. And waterfall, again, it's not that super popular, but you will watch like 5 minutes video and that explains the difference and so on. So you will get prepared. And of course, those are all great bullets in your resume right there.
Yep. Okay, let's move on. And yeah, as a reminder, if you didn't pay for a course, you can do that now. We have a special price up until tonight, I guess. So it's $18.97. So if you still, I mean, hesitating, you can like pay now and you can reserve the price. And I mean, again, our first week, it's a free money back guarantee. So you can return your money if you don't like it. But only for tonight, we have this special price. And you can just use the links to pay for it. You can use our QR code.
We do actually have a split payment. There was a lot of questions about that. So you can see two options here. One is the pay upfront. It's $18.97 today. It's a second class. So basically we kind of we over 50% now of the free classes, right? So we basically closing out the enrollment period pretty soon. So it's better do it now, but at the same time, we also have split payment, which is, we had a lot of questions about that. So there is a link down there. You can split your payment. You pay $9.99 today and another $9.98 in a month, 1 month. So this is the deal for today. Could you please do the other one as well? This is for QA engineer, right? From basically from no experience to QA engineer, so you can get a job as a QA analyst or QA engineer, and compensation usually up to like 60,000-70,000 a year, or like $30-40 an hour. Depends on where you are and so on. If you have previous experience in many different factors and luck as well. Sometimes they don't ask anything, they give you super offers. Sometimes they grill you for 5 days and they'll lowball you. It happens sometimes as well, so you never know. So another one is QA automation. So if you go all the way and become a QA automation, that will include the manual part, which is the previous one, right? Analyst and engineer, and you will learn the Java and Selenium WebDriver and SQL and API automation, all of that. So it's basically more like SDET. So for this one, is target is around 100,000, like 6 figures. But again, cannot really promise you anything, but we have a lot of students who did 100K. For this one, we have 3 options. One is the ISA contract. It's $24.99 now for both courses, and then ISA contract, which is 10% of your paycheck for 12 months. So in this case, we take the risk. If you get a job, you pay. If you don't get a job, you don't pay, right? So it's less in the beginning, more after, in case you get a job. So we take that risk. Another option is split payments. There was a lot of questions about that too. Like, what if I don't want to sign up for ISA because it seems to me it's expensive? Indeed, it's way more expensive than paying upfront. We have split payment option as well. So it's 2 payments, $1,750 each. So it's $3,500 total. Again, one now and one in a month, and you're all set, no ISA contract. Or if you already purchased the QA engineer course, or we actually got a couple of requests from students from previous groups. It's flat rate $700 with ISA contract as well. So the link is there. You can just upgrade. That's basically are the options. So I think we are done for today. It took us a little bit longer, but we're working. So last time it took us way longer, right? So we did some homework. Okay, we will adjust and we will speed up, I promise you. But I hope you guys enjoyed. So any questions, guys? Yeah, sometimes it's not a matter of time, but it's a matter of the knowledge that you gain, right? It's better to spend like extra few minutes, but you understand the topic, and we are not, you're not asking questions because you don't get a thing, and we're not coming back. So it's clear and all good. Jira is not, we're not registering in Jira this week. We will register next week.
Yeah, guys, just ignore those tickets that I created. I just did it for demonstration. You just use LMS, go one by one, and finish all the homework. Like for now, we are not touching a Jira. We're gonna touch it starting on next week.
Yeah, next week we will actually start with reporting defects in Jira, and then we will be writing test cases in Jira. So I believe we have like 2 weeks or so working with the Jira itself for basically Jira is like a main tool for us to where we sit and pick up those tickets and write defects and all that. Okay, any other questions? So what's the upgrade option? So upgrade option, it's for people who already purchased QA engineer course, the one before, for whatever price, even for previous students from previous groups, you can basically get QA automation course. It's only 700 out of pocket right now and 10% ISA contract later on, if you want to, of course. Yeah, that's the thing. If you haven't purchased anything, you have 2 options. For SDET, it's $24.99 for plus ISA contract, or split payments $17.50 each. Guys, if you have any questions, just ask in Telegram. I hope we answered all the questions that you asked, guys, but you know, it's pretty busy. And the next class is gonna be held on Thursday, 6 p.m. the same time. Okay, where's the LMS link? Okay, we will answer that in the Telegram. Okay, we will post that in Telegram. All right, so it sounds like we don't have any other questions. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you on Thursday or in Telegram.
Take care, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.